From the editors of Cook's Illustrated magazine, it's America's Test Kitchen. With your host, Christopher Kimball. Featuring Test Kitchen chefs Julia Collin-Davison, Bridget Lancaster, Becky Hayes, with Adam Reed in the equipment corner and Jack Bishop in the tasting lab. Discover the secrets of America's foremost food testers and tasters today on America's Test Kitchen. Today on America's Test Kitchen, Julia uncovers the secrets to cooking with a slow cooker. First, she teaches Chris how to make the ultimate old-fashioned chicken noodle soup. Next, she reveals the Test Kitchen's secrets for foolproof pork loin. And finally, she makes the perfect chocolate hazelnut bread pudding. That's all right here on America's Test Kitchen. America's Test Kitchen is brought to you by DCS by Fisher & Paykel. America's cooks rely on innovation and culinary precision. DCS by Fisher & Paykel, offering premium indoor and outdoor kitchen appliances.
And by Kohler, inspiring home chefs to create a professional level kitchen with innovative sinks, faucets, and cook centers. Kohler.
And by Diamond Crystal Salt for the professional chef and those who want to cook like one. Diamond Crystal, the gourmet choice. By Cooking.com, an online retailer for the kitchen enthusiast. If it's not in your kitchen, try ours. By Plum Amazins, diced dried plums from Sunsweet for amazing recipes. By Miracle Grow, the gardener's friend. By California Avocados. And by Chateau San Michel.
Have you ever heard of something called the Naxon Beanery All-Purpose Cooker? Well, that was the first slow cooker. In 1970, it was transformed and bought out and turned into the rival Crock-Pot. And since then, of course, everybody makes them. Millions have been sold. They're much more sophisticated and, of course, a lot more expensive. Yet, the basic cooking problems remain, and boy, do they have cooking problems. The first is this is long, slow cooking, so something delicate like chicken, for example, gets overcooked tough and completely washed out. Then if you cook, let's say, a roast or pork, it turns out that all the juices come out, so you end up with watery dishwasher liquid. And finally, some people say, hey, I can do anything in a crock pot. I can even make a cake. Fix it and forget it? You bet. Let's just forget it. It's time for a whole new way of thinking in the kitchen when it comes to slow cooking. So let's go into the test kitchen with Julia and start a slow cooker revolution.
Slow cooker, chicken soup. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna brown the chicken, and you have chicken thighs. We're also gonna include chicken breasts because over the course of our testing, we like both white and dark meat in the soup. So this is 1.5 pounds of bone-in chicken thighs. We're gonna brown them in the skillet. Now, a lot of recipes for slow cooker chicken noodle soup really just chuck stuff in there, some canned broth, some boneless, skinless breasts that they cut up into chunks, some vegetables and noodles and turn the sucker on, and that was obviously really terrible. The chicken was overdone, the broth had no flavor. So in order to get flavor, you need to do some browning. In fact, that's a really good tip for the slow cooker. If you're cooking something that doesn't have a ton of flavor, a lot of spice, a little browning goes a long way.
So this concept of like dump it and then go away,
yes,
that really rarely works.
That's right. So we're gonna brown the chicken thighs, and also notice bone-in chicken here. You can't use boneless chicken in this application because the bones give it real flavor. So we're gonna brown these chicken thighs on both sides, and that should take about 6 to 8 minutes.
Okay.
All right, so you can see these are nice and golden on both sides. Of course, we flipped them over halfway through cooking. We're gonna set them aside, and look at all that gorgeous fond and that chicken schmaltz, which of course you want to keep a little bit of it. Can't keep all of it, it would make the soup too greasy. So I'm going to pour off all but a tablespoon of it. And now we're going to jumpstart the veg that goes into the soup. And this is 1 minced onion and 2 stalks of celery that have been chopped medium. And then here's 3 carrots that have been also chopped medium. We're going to saute these just for a little bit to help release their flavor and get them a little bit softened. So it's been about 8 minutes. Obviously, the onions have wilted a little bit, and the carrots are starting to soften, which is perfect. So now we're going to add some aromatics. This is 3 cloves of garlic. So I'm going to use the garlic pressed right into the skillet to make it easy. And we're also going to add 2 teaspoons of fresh thyme. And of course, you could use dried thyme here as well, but the equivalency for 2 teaspoons of fresh is about half a teaspoon of dried.
Okay.
We're gonna add tomato paste. Now, tomato paste we found really works wonders in this slow cooker. It adds a really hearty, deep flavor to almost everything. Along with just a little bit of crushed red pepper flakes. These add a little bit of heat, about 1/8 of a teaspoon. Now, obviously, there's some good flavor stuck to the bottom of that pan, so what we're gonna do is take a little bit of the broth. This is 8 cups of low-sodium chicken broth. And just add about a cup of it. And then scrape up the bottom of the pan, make sure all that flavor gets into the broth. I'm gonna add it right to the slow cooker.
Okay, so now I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Great.
There are a couple million people at home probably watching the show, and they're going like, I thought this was a slow cooker show.
I know.
And I see this person sauteing, which looks like regular cooking.
It does.
So
Yeah.
justify yourself. What's going on?
Well, you know, you can't throw out everything you know about cooking just because you're using a slow cooker. Some delicate foods need some browning. You can't overcook meats. You have to be very mindful of the cooking times. And you can get away with a little of that throw and go if you use really flavorful ingredients. So there's a handful of recipes that works for. But for the most time, the classic recipes like beef stew and chicken soup, you got to do a little prep work.
Okay.
All right, so now we're going to add the rest of this broth. Here, I'll give it to you. And again, that was 8 cups of low-sodium chicken broth. And one of the things we found throughout the testing is you don't want to add too much salt up front because you never know how it's going to transform over the hours of cooking. Something you think isn't very salty could wind up knocking your socks off. So, low-sodium broth. Now we're going to add the browned chicken thighs. And another trick, pull off the skin. The skin made great fond, and it was great for building the flavor. But when we add it to the slow
Just
cooker,
gets soggy and nasty.
that's right, and it makes the soup really greasy. You can nestle those in. We're gonna add 2 bay leaves, pretty classic for soup. And finally, remember I said we like both light and dark meat, obviously for the flavor and the texture in the final soup. But one thing we found is that delicate meats and vegetables can overcook in the slow cooker. And a trick to doing something like a chicken breast is to wrap it in a foil packet and keep it on top. It cooks much more slowly and you won't get those dry, stringy pieces.
So this is a chicken breast hobo pack?
It is a hobo pack.
Okay.
And we do this with delicate vegetables when you're doing stews that cook for 9 or 10 hours. Now the last trick to using a slow cooker is to not overcook things. Chicken always has to be cooked between 4 and 6 hours on low. And we give those wide ranges of 4 to 6 hours, not because you can choose your own time, but really slow cookers vary dramatically in terms of how hot or cool they are. So that really accommodates a range of slow cookers. Once you learn how your slow cooker works, you'll figure out what timing's best. All right, so I'm gonna set this on low for 4 hours. And there we go. We'll come back and we'll finish the soup up.
And it's time to check in with our gadget girl, Lisa McManus.
Well, Chris, we recently tested 7 popular models of slow cookers, and this one was our hands-down favorite. It's the Crock-Pot touchscreen, and it cost $130. It had tons of features that we really liked. 6.5 quarts is a great capacity. It's an oval shape, which holds a large roast. It's got a clear lid so you can see what's going on, some good easy-to-grab handles on the insert. Best of all, it has this touchscreen control panel. It was really well designed, very simple, very easy to use. It's programmable up to 20 hours, which is great, gives you tons of flexibility. Its maximum temperature on low was 199 degrees and on high 204.5, which means your food never boils to death, keeps all the flavor and the moisture intact. One of the things we learned along the way is that it's important to know the heat output of your slow cooker. If you don't own this model, you'll want to test yours to be sure that you're going to get the best results from your recipes. We have a simple test. You put 4 quarts of water in here, cover it, turn it on high or low for 6 hours. So if you test your water after 6 hours, it should read between 195 and 205, and that's how you know you'll get the best results from your recipes. So this is our favorite slow cooker, the Crock-Pot touchscreen for $130. It's a real winner.
So it's been 4 hours and our soup is cooked. And I'm gonna go in there and pull that chicken out so that we can shred it. All right, so that's the chicken breast packet. I'm gonna fish out those thighs. So I'm gonna let this broth soup settle for a little bit, let the fat rise to the top so we can skin it off in a little bit. Okay. Set this aside to cool for a little bit before we shred it. And I'll open up the packet. Oh, that looks good. Let that cool just a little bit. And now we're gonna cook some noodles. Now a lot of recipes we found just added the egg noodles right to the slow cooker, but that doesn't work. They don't really get firm. In fact, they just disintegrate and get really mushy. So better off a little pot of salted boiling water. This is a cup of egg noodles. We're gonna cook them until they're tender while we shred our chicken. Use one fork to hold the meat and the other just to pull the shreds away into nice bite-sized pieces. And look how tender this meat is. So we're gonna finish up boiling these noodles and I'll shred this chicken and we can come back and try the soup.
Okay.
All right, so I shredded all that chicken and these noodles look pretty tender. All right, drain the noodles. Now, if we want to skim the fat off the top, because of course it's been sitting for a little bit, so the fat has risen. Sometimes you get more than other, obviously, depending on how fatty your chicken is. And then we're gonna look for those bay leaves. There's one, and there's the other. And now we're ready to just add everything to the soup. Shredded chicken, drained noodles, and this is half a cup of frozen peas. Note they're still frozen, obviously, because the soup is ripping hot. And last but not least, 2 tablespoons of chopped parsley. All right, so everything's sat in there for a few minutes and gotten nice and hot. I'm not gonna add any more salt, I'm just gonna add a little pepper. Ah, you're gonna love this. And it looks so good with those homey style shreds of chicken. You know, you don't want those little cubes of cafeteria chicken in your soup.
Also has a nice, rich looking broth as well.
Oh, it smells so good. Oh.
You know what's really surprising is you think after 4 hours it would taste kind of dead because it was in there too long. No, it doesn't.
No.
It's a nice fresh taste.
And the vegetables aren't blown out. You know, you'd think with the 4 hours of cooking on low they'd be mushy, but they're not. They're perfect.
That is really delicious. So we had a few secrets of slow cooker cooking, which was to start out developing flavor. A lot of recipes will sort of dump it and forget it, but it turns out that you do need to saute the chicken, a little of the vegetables to develop flavor. The second is that lots of delicate foods like chicken actually make a hobo pack, wrap in foil, slows down the cooking so they don't get overcooked, because chicken will get overcooked. Thirdly, 4 hours on low is really the best for chicken. Check it after 4 hours, a little more if you need to. And finally, any kind of recipe that uses pasta in a slow cooker, cook that separately and then add it at the end so it doesn't get blown out. So there you have it. America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen, a fabulous recipe for slow cooker chicken noodle soup. This is excellent.
Isn't that good?
I brought you one enormous
You
loin.
shouldn't have.
I shouldn't have. That's what they always say. So if your spatial skills aren't too good,
Right?
yeah, mine are okay. If you go buy a pork loin, you can buy a shorter one,
That's
which
right.
is bigger in diameter, or you could buy something like this, which is I think the biggest one I've ever seen.
That's very long.
And the problem is, of course, it doesn't fit in the pan.
Yeah, that's right. The other thing is it's very skinny, so that it's really more prone to overcooking during the long hours of the slow cooker. So definitely should look for one that's sort of squat and wide and a little chubby. So we have a 4.5 to 5 pound center cut pork loin roast, tied at 1 inch intervals, which of course helps keep it compact in a nice round shape so that it cooks more evenly. We're gonna pat it dry with paper towels, giving it a good season with salt and pepper. All right, so a good amount of salt and pepper. And of course, the other favorite trick, mixing your salt and your pepper beforehand so that if you get your porky hands in there, you're not ruining the whole box
My what?
of salt. Your
Porky hands?
Your porky hands. You want to season it pretty liberally. And when I get it all over the board, sometimes I roll the meat back and forth and it picks it right up. So we're gonna heat up a tablespoon of vegetable oil, and we're gonna give it a good browning before we put it in the slow cooker. That little bit of browning really enhances the flavor of the sauce.
Okay.
So again, the way to tell that your pan is hot enough to sear meat is you're looking for those wisps of smoke, which I'm seeing coming right off the skillet now. So we're gonna brown this pork on all sides, all 4 sides. That should take about 10 minutes or so.
Okay.
In the meanwhile, we're gonna get together our sauce for the slow cooker.
Gonna get together our sauce.
Yes, we
Okay,
is.
so we have cranberry sauce.
That's right, that's 1 can of whole berry cranberry sauce.
Okay.
And this is dried cranberries, that's half a cup.
Okay.
That's half a cup of orange juice. That's 1/8 of a teaspoon cinnamon. And the last thing we're gonna add to our sauce is strips of fresh orange zest, which really add a good flavor. And just using a peeler, and of course I washed the orange to get rid of any dirt or pesticides on it. And you see, I avoided any of that white pith, because that white pith, of course, tastes pretty bitter.
Okay.
So that's 1 strip. We're gonna add 3 altogether. 2, 3. That's the sauce.
So we're using not much liquid and then ingredients that have very strong, intense flavors.
That's right,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
key. Just gonna finish browning the sides here. All right, that looks pretty good, lightly browned on all sides. We're gonna nestle this right into the slow cooker, into the sauce, put the lid on, and we're gonna cook it on low. Now, one good thing to know about pork, especially if it's lean pork like this, it's much like chicken. You don't wanna cook it on high because that'll really wreck the meat. So we're gonna cook it on low for about 4 hours, and then what we're looking for is that the internal temperature of the roast registers about 140 to 145. All right, so it's been about 4 hours on low, and now we're gonna temp the pork loin. Pork needs to be cooked to 140, 145, or else it's gonna taste like styrofoam. So we'll just temp right here in the middle. Nailed it, 141, 142. We're gonna take it out of the slow cooker and let it rest for about 20 minutes, and of course, the carryover cooking will help that temperature climb a little bit. Now you can see, look at all this juice that has come out of the pork loin. Remember, it was a really tight sauce when it first went in, and all the liquid has come out of the pork. Now, sometimes there's a lot of fat sitting on the surface, but if that happens, you can just go in and with a spoon and pick up some of the fat and set it aside. It doesn't matter if you're cooking in a slow cooker or a Dutch oven, you'd do that anyway. So now we're gonna pick out those 3 orange zest strips. Just set them aside here. And then we're gonna take this sauce, which is now super loose and watery, and we're gonna reduce it on the stovetop for about 10 minutes, pour it into a saucepan.
So if we had started, this is one of the tips, if we had started by adding like a couple cups of stock and maybe a cup of wine, we would have been...
Yeah, it would have been soup. And in fact, we did that for quite a few tests until we realized you really need to start with just a little bit of liquid. And again, we're gonna bring this to a simmer for about 10 minutes or so till it reduces and gets nice and thick. And of course, we're gonna tent our pork loin while it rests. So it's been about 20 minutes since our pork loin had its little nap. Resting time, beautiful. And of course, we reduced this down until it was nice and thick. So you want this to measure about 2 cups. Perfect. Ready to tackle our pork loin. I'm just gonna use scissors to cut off the twine, which helped keep it in that nice round shape. And now we'll slice it pretty thin. Well, it looks good, and you can see how moist it is in there. All right, may I serve you a few slices? And a little sauce. Oh, doesn't that look good? Isn't that good?
That is the juiciest slice of pork loin I've ever had in
It's
my life.
good.
That is incredibly juicy.
Usually you think of these lean cuts of meat coming out of the slow cooker. You think they're gonna be so dry and have no flavor, but you know what you're doing.
So when I was a kid, we specialized in our household in dry, overcooked pork with a watery sauce. I mean, that was really, we had the worst
You
of
nailed
both.
it.
Yeah, we nailed it. And so, you know, it's sort of like having that thing as a kid, you're used to it. So
Yeah.
now when I have something juicy, delicious with a great sauce, I'm going, oh, what's this? It's better, that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's really surprising you can get this out of a slow cooker.
So yes, you can use a slow cooker to roast, essentially cook a pork loin. And the secret was getting a nice center cut pork loin and sauteing it. And then in goes not a lot of liquid, but some very high flavor ingredients. Cranberry sauce, cranberries, orange juice. 4 hours on low, and that's pretty much it. Reduce the sauce and you're good to go. So from America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen, a really easy but vastly better recipe than what I grew up with for pork loin with cranberries and orange. And that's in the slow cooker. So we're in slow cooker land.
Yes, bread pudding, which is a great recipe, easy to put together, and you can serve it warm right from the slow cooker, which is very cool.
I should say, like at the beginning of the show, we talked about how people think they can do anything in the slow cooker.
Yes.
And they can't.
You can't.
But we are walking on the wild side and we're doing bread pudding.
Right.
Okay.
Yep, and it works really well.
Okay.
So, but the thing about doing something dry like bread pudding or lasagna is you need to put what we call a foil collar in the back of the slow cooker. And that's because the front of the slow cooker has controls on it. And so when there's controls, there's no heating element. So this is the cool side. And then this, of course, has all the coils in it. It's the hot side. So things not only cook unevenly, but if you have something like bread pudding, which is very sweet
Sugary,
and custody, it'll burn.
Okay.
So a couple layers of heavy-duty aluminum foil. We're just going to nestle it right into the back of the slow cooker and acts like a buffer. And so we're also going to line the slow cooker with a sling. And slings, of course, help you pull things out of pans like brownies. In this case, we don't want the custard getting on the back side of the foil collar. 2 pieces of foil perpendicular to one another. And there you go. Now the slow cooker's ready for our bread pudding.
Okay.
And of course, we're going to grease it up just a little bit so that things don't stick. And there we go.
Doesn't look particularly elegant, I would say, but it is safe now.
It's not elegant, but it does work really well. Okay, so moving on to the bread. Of course, we tried lots of different kinds of bread to make bread pudding, and we liked challah the best. And so this is a 14-ounce loaf of challah, and notice it's been cut into 1-inch pieces and it's dry. We dried it in a very low oven, a 225-degree oven, for about 40 minutes, because if you don't dry it, the bread comes out really soggy and mushy. But if you dry it, it holds its shape and it turns creamy.
So if you just let it sit out, like let it stale, what happens is it'll recrystallize, but it locks in a lot of the moisture in the bread, because that takes longer. In the oven, you get a lot of evaporation, which happens more quickly. So by the time that bread recrystallizes, actually a lot of the moisture is gone, so you don't end up with soggy bread when it heats up again.
That's right. So again, this is a 14-ounce loaf of challah, and this is half a cup of our favorite brand of chocolate chips. And we're just gonna toss them together and add them into our slow cooker.
And you mentioned Ghirardelli is our. We actually use this for baking chocolate. You know, it's like a dark,
That's
semi-sweet chocolate as well. And we like their chips.
Their chips are the best.
2-time winners. There you go, Ghirardelli.
All right, so now it's time to do the custard. And you're in for a treat because we're gonna do Nutella bread pudding, which is one of my personal favorites. So I have in the bowl 9 yolks, and to this I'm gonna add 1 cup. I know you want a little taste.
But is it bread? Is it chocolate pudding or Nutella?
It's Nutella, which is that chocolate hazelnut spread. If you're not familiar with it, it's found usually next to the peanut butter.
It's in the bottom right drawer of Julia's desk. So she's about 3 things of it.
And we're gonna whisk this together to loosen it up. And this is 2 cups of whole milk. All right, so that's 2 cups of milk, 2 cups of heavy cream, a little bit of sugar. This is 3/4 of a cup sugar. Vanilla, 4 teaspoons of vanilla extract.
A lot.
Yeah, well, you know, you got to punch up the flavors in the slow cooker because the long cooking time tends to cook away flavors. And also, we're making a lot of bread pudding. A little bit of salt, 3/4 of a teaspoon salt. We're just going to whisk this together until it's good and smooth. We've dissolved all that Nutella and all those yolks. Okay, and we're going to pour this into the slow cooker right on top of the bread. And press on the bread just a little bit. Make sure it all gets coated in that custard. All right, that's good. And to top it off, we're gonna make a little topping with a little sugar. It makes a little crispy topping. And this is 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. Gonna mix it with a tablespoon of white sugar. And just sprinkle it over the top. Pretty easy.
Dead simple, as they say.
All right, put the lid on, of course, and now we're gonna cook it on low for about 4 hours.
Okay.
And there we have it. All right, so it cooked on low for 4 hours, and then we let it sit here. Oh, smell that. Oh, it smells so good. That Nutella and the chocolate.
I find that eating food is actually even better than just smelling it. I mean,
agree.
they're related, you know.
I'm with you. I'm with you. All right, so
Ooh, that looks good.
doesn't that look good? A little whipped cream on top?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I admit that in a way, this is kind of a silly notion. A slow cooker, bread pudding, Nutella. I mean, the whole thing sounds a bit far-fetched. No,
But it's so tasty.
but I'm betting on you.
Oh, isn't that good?
You know what's really odd is that a lot of bread pudding, the texture's all wrong. And oddly enough, 4 hours of cooking in a slow cooker, the texture's really good.
Yeah, that bread has that soft custardy texture.
This is
Oh,
not-
it's such a winner.
I'm sorry. This is an incredibly stupid idea that turned out really well.
Yep.
That's what this is.
Yep. We made a lot of bad slow cooker desserts to find a few that really worked.
Oh, this is really good. So the secret to great slow cooker Nutella bread pudding was actually to dry out the bread in the oven so it didn't have that moisture inside. We also made a foil collar around so it didn't burn on the opposite side from the controls. The rest of it's really pretty basic, which means the custard, it means the bread. Put it together in there for 4 hours on low, and voila, if you can say that, really a fabulous bread pudding. So you can get this recipe and all the recipes from this season of America's Test Kitchen, our tastings, testings, view selected episodes at our website, americastestkitchentv.com, and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. And I highly recommend this pudding. I mean, this extends the range of the slow cooker.
Oh, I love this dessert.
This is really good.
America's Test Kitchen is brought to you by DCS by Fisher & Paykel, America's cooks rely on innovation and culinary precision. DCS by Fisher & Paykel, offering premium indoor and outdoor kitchen appliances.
For over 50 years, Miracle-Gro products have helped home chefs grow fresh vegetables and herbs. Miracle-Gro soils and plant foods provide the essential nutrients plants need to grow bountiful produce. Gardening tips are available online at miraclegro.com.
By Cooking.com, an online retailer for the kitchen enthusiast. If it's not in your kitchen, try ours. Chateau Saint Michel. Digital wine cellar and pairings can be found online.
From our hands to your table. Recipes available at californiaavocado.com.
And by Kohler. Diamond Crystal Salt, the gourmet choice. Plum Amazins from Sunsweet.